Hello everyone. In this video we'll talk about the thesis statement. The thesis statement is usually a single sentence. It's usually found in the introduction of an essay. And what the thesis statement does is it tells the reader what the essay is going to be about. On this slide we can see what makes a thesis statement. So thesis statements typically have three parts or three elements. We have the subject, so that's the subject matter of the essay, what the essay will be about. We've got the author's position, what the author of the essay thinks about this subject, and the reasoning. This is the reasoning why the author thinks the way they do. So next we'll take a look at a couple examples of thesis statements so we can begin to understand how these elements work and what they look like in an actual sentence. So on this page we have two thesis statements, and I'd like you to take a look at those two sentences and see if you can identify the subject, the author's position, and the reasoning. You can go ahead and pause the video if you like to pick out those three elements in each sentence. Okay, and after you've reviewed those sentences, hopefully you're able to identify those three elements in each of the sentences. We're going to review them now together. So our first sentence, our first thesis reads, "Women should be allowed to join combat units because the image of women as combat soldiers would help society overcome gender stereotyping." So in this first clause here, women should be allowed to join combat units. Here we can see the subject, women in combat units. We can also identify the position. Women should be allowed to join combat units. So from that first clause, we understand what the subject is and also the author's position, what the author thinks. In this case, it's kind of nice and easy to identify. We see the word should, right? And that lets us know we're going to get an author's opinion, someone's opinion there, right? So women should be allowed to join combat units. There's our subject and our position. The reasoning follows after because. So this clause here gives us the reasoning or the rationale why our author thinks that women should be allowed to join combat units. And that reason is the image of women as combat soldiers would help society overcome gender stereotyping. So there's the reasoning or the rationale for allowing women to join combat units. We'll take a look at the second example as well to further illustrate these elements. So this sentence reads, "This new reality with AI may seem like a positive thing, but it should be strictly regulated because it can also pose dangers such as out-of-control autonomous military machines and the spreading of social media misinformation." Okay, so as you can tell just by a glance, this thesis statement is a little bit longer and it's a little bit more complex in that it's acknowledging kind of the other side of the argument. So that's our first clause here. This new reality with AI, that's artificial intelligence, may seem like a positive thing, but it should be strictly regulated. Okay, so here we have our subject. We're talking about AI, artificial intelligence. And we have the author's position over here. Again, we have the word should, right? It should be strictly regulated. And now something to keep in mind is that not every thesis statement will use the word should, so that's something to be aware of. But in this case, our two examples do happen to have should in them. But it should be strictly regulated. Okay, so here our author is saying that our subject, AI, should be, there's our position, strictly regulated. And again, we have another nice because clause giving us our reasoning. So our author's reasoning for thinking AI should be strictly regulated is that it can also pose dangers such as out-of-control autonomous military machines and the spreading of social media misinformation. So thinking about, out-of-control drones and chatbots causing mayhem on the internet, right? So these are the reasoning that our author has laid out for us. And that's really all we need for a thesis statement. Of course, a little easier said than done, but hopefully looking at these examples helps you when you're developing and revising your own thesis statements. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll be happy to get back to you. And you can always visit me during my virtual office hours. Until then,